Stop chasing sex. Too many men are giving away their attention, their time, their money, their emotional energy, and their self-respect to women who have not earned that level of investment. Porn, OnlyFans, casual sex, and pursuing women who use sexual access as leverage is only going to harm men and cause them to become reactive, desperate, and at the end of the day, bitter and resentful towards women and relationships. This episode is about taking back your sexual power as a man. It's about testing the woman's character before you go into the bedroom with her. Now, before I go any further, something I want to say, and please don't skip this is really important, is the need before any consideration around sex is having self-respect for your own sexual health. So it's really important that you listen to what I'm about to say here and you share this with all the men in your life, okay? So over 4,000 men each year in Australia die of prostate cancer, and it is my recommendation, although obviously I'm not a medical doctor, it is my recommendation that you at least get one prostate-specific antigen test, or a PSA test as it's called, in order to set a baseline for your prostate health moving forward. Now, a lot of doctors may recommend this later in your 50s, but you need to be prescriptive when you go in there and demand that you get a PSA test just to set that baseline. It's not worth the dice roll even if you are young. Second of all, testicular cancer is the leading solid cancer that kills predominantly young men as young as 15 to 39, and particularly within the 20 to 39 age bracket. Now, about 97 to 98% of the time, men are surviving testicular cancer, particularly if it is diagnosed early and they are living past 5 years. So that is great. But if you're a young man, and if you're a man in general, I would highly also recommend that you get at least one testicular ultrasound to set a baseline for your health moving forward. Once again, your doctors may say that you don't need to do it because you're young, but I highly recommend that you do that. Now, that baseline, whether it be for the PSA test or it be for the testicular ultrasound, are invaluable. They are extremely important. So please get those and let other men know that they should be doing the same. Last of all is fertility, okay? So if you're wanting to have children at some time in the future, or you're already planning and you're with a woman, you owe it to the woman that you're going to get into a relationship, or the woman you're already with, to know what your own fertility is, okay? So I'd highly recommend that you also talk to your GP about getting a referral to a proper specialised fertility clinic in which you can go in to do the fertility test directly in there, where often the laboratories are connected to, as opposed to going through your local pathology clinic where you might do your bloods, because there can be a delay there in the time. So that's another thing. So in summary, my recommendation to all men is to get a prostate-specific antigen test, a PSA test, get a testicular ultrasound, and get your fertility checked. Please share this part of the video with as many men as possible. Now, moving away from the public service announcement, if you will, I want to talk about withholding sex early on in the sort of the courtship process, or the dating process, if you will. Now, I did touch on this a little bit in my last video, Choose Better, but I think it's important to understand that effectively that a woman's sexual access should not override your standards. Okay, remember that. A woman's sexual access should not override your standards. Okay, so it's really important to know what your standards are before you begin dating, before you pursue relationships, and even if you're going to pursue casual sex, which in my personal opinion I don't recommend. Now obviously the cost of casual sex to men at a social level is less frowned upon than it is for women, although increasingly so due to third, fourth, fifth wave feminist movements, and really all of the feminist movements from the first and second wave as well, that women are increasingly becoming just as promiscuous as men. In fact, they are, as I've said in one of my other videos, having more sex than men, even though they are less likely to want to be actively looking for a relationship. So that's quite interesting. I think it's really important in this regard, and it sounds a bit cliched, but to have a bit of a third date rule, right? And what do I mean by this? Well, we've all heard in the movies and you know, in the sort of pop culture where women are encouraged to withhold any sexual intimacy from a man until she's got to the third date. Now, it's my belief that men need to take that rule of thumb, that heuristic, and apply it to themselves, okay? If you're going to date a woman, have the standards and show to her that you have standards by not sleeping with her straight away. Now, it may be the case that you just want to have a casual hookup. It may be the case that she just wants a casual hookup. And look, at the end of the day, that's up to you what you want to do with your body. But if that's the way you want to go about things, you're only going to cheapen your own body, your own character, your own reputation, and really your soul. I don't recommend it. I really don't recommend promiscuity for men, although to some women, a man who has experience is actually seen as slightly more attractive, according to some research, whereas men have a higher disgust sensitivity around women who are promiscuous. And the main reason for that is evolutionary psychology, whereby a woman, when she's pregnant, with a high degree of likelihood knows who she's pregnant to. But if a man is with that woman, there is always that part of his brain that is not entirely sure whether that child is his, certainly if the relationship is very early. So it's a high risk if a woman is promiscuous for a man, because he may raise a child that's not his. But that's something I've touched on in my earlier videos, and I'm sure I'll circle back to a bit of evolutionary psychology, if you will. Another thing I want to bring up again is that sex really can cloud male judgment, okay? If you're just horny and you're constantly thinking about sex, well, first of all, congratulations. Maybe you've got high testosterone and healthy testosterone levels. That's a good thing, all right? So I don't want to fully demonize that. And unfortunately, society seems to keep demonizing men with healthy sexual desires who are wanting to have sex. And I actually think, well, that's a good thing, right? I think there are worse things out there, to be honest. But I think it's important to realize that you need to not let sexual access become a blindfold. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, just because you have access to sex doesn't necessarily mean that your intention or your mindset going into that is such that it's going to lead to a overall positive outcome short of just having sex. Now, like I've said, if you just want to have sex, okay, once again, that's up to you. But if you are wanting to grow and develop as a man, if you're wanting to develop good character and good nature and have self-respect, and also be the kind of man that in the event that you meet a great woman, she can know and you can truthfully tell her that you've not been a man who's just been sleeping around indiscriminately with low quality women, right? Because that's actually not going to be attractive to her. And at the end of the day, for longevity of your dating and your serious intent to pursue a relationship with maybe the outcome of getting married or having children, you're not going to attract women, high quality women, who are going to find that kind of behavior attractive. Now, I think that that blindfold that I'm talking about with sex is that if it's left on and you go into sexual relationships with women, certainly with a casual mindset initially, then that's going to blind you to the red flags that she has, like I talked about in my last video. You're only thinking with your hormones and you're thinking with your dick, right? And at the end of the day, that's going to cloud your judgment as to who that woman really is and whether or not, short of having maybe nice, great, fun sex with her, is going to blind you to what might come after that, okay? So if she's an unstable, mentally unstable woman or a woman of poor character, okay, there's a couple things that could happen depending on how you treat her after the fact as well. Although, in my experience, in a lot of cases, that doesn't even matter. You could treat a woman very well after sex and be very respectful and state your intention from the start and maybe even say to her, look, thank you, but obviously it was just casual sex. I don't want to see you again. Once again, don't recommend it. Doesn't matter. If she's emotionally unstable or anything like that, it's going to end badly for you. And we know that women in particular are really affected by promiscuity and having too much sex, because often they all form a connection straight away with a man, and if that man leaves, then straight away it makes her feel that she's been used and that her self-image, self-esteem are effectively worthless, okay? When that happens, one of two things will happen. Either she's going to try to reach out to you to verbally abuse you, and if she sees you out, maybe she'll even physically abuse you or assault you. Or two, she's going to badmouth you to all of her friends. Now, if you're living in a small community like I am in Hobart, right, I can tell you right now from personal experience again, and I'm pretty cautious about what I should and shouldn't admit, if you accidentally set foot wrong, even slightly, or even if you don't, and you do the right thing, as I've done many, many times, if the woman is unstable because you had that blindfold on and you had sex with her and you ignored the red flags, then it is going to cause you a world of hurt, okay? So you need to really think about that and not allow sex to cloud your judgment and act as a blindfold. Now, another thing I want to mention is around not actually wasting your sexual energy, right? Now, what do I mean by wasting your sexual energy? Well, obviously not having sex with the wrong woman and not, as well, to put it bluntly, masturbating all the time, all right? Rubbing one out, so to speak. I think that, you really don't want to be giving your sexual energy to women who can't even remember your name, who don't know who you are as a person, who are really not interested in anything about you as a person, have not made any effort, have not made any investment, as I said at the start of this video. And on the other side of that, women that you've not tested their character around, okay? So don't waste your sexual energy on those women, because once again, it's going to cheapen your soul. But I think one of the things we need to talk about here, aside from just physical sex, is the issue of excess masturbation, if you will, which is really awkward for me to talk about. But anyway, it's important. You have these things in the manosphere or other weird realms online where they talk about no fap and this kind of thing. Now, I don't think, and it's advisable medically to not masturbate at all, right? I think there's actually research around the need to at least do it, a couple of times a week, because it helps with blood flow, and can actually reduce prostate cancer, if I recall, but don't quote me on that. So there are health benefits to doing it. Now, what I would say, though, is that if you are planning a date with a woman and you are wanting to have sex with her, okay, my advice is to protect that sexual energy with great vigor, so to speak. Okay, so if you're going to plan to have sex with a woman and the date is 3 days away, well, you should probably abstain from looking at pornography, and you should probably abstain from rubbing one out, right? Because as horny as you might be leading up to that, that sexual energy, that tension can be expressed in a wonderful way with that woman should she want to have sex with you and be intimate, okay? And that's particularly important because, one, it's going to help with erection strength, right? And it's going to help with your ability to, I guess, show to her a strong masculine energy, and that you want her, and that's attractive to women. They want to feel wanted. But obviously then there's obviously the issue around stamina, right, and edging and that kind of stuff. So if you've waited that long, then yes, it is the case that you're going to be more sensitive, and you're going to bloody effectively have an orgasm too soon, potentially, or premature ejaculation, which is a serious issue for men. So that needs to be talked about, and don't be ashamed of those things. Please talk to your general practitioner and get assistance with those things, because I think a lot of men are not talking enough about things like I mentioned, like the issues with prostate cancer, testicular cancer, fertility, and erectile dysfunction as well, and premature ejaculation. Very important things to talk about. Now, in regard to the latter of those two, well, preserving that sexual energy is going to help, and not looking at pornography, okay? So looking at OnlyFans, going on lewd websites is really not going to help with you in the long run with your sexual energy. Obviously here in Australia and many parts of the world, but here recently in Australia, we've just had the major pornography websites like Pornhub, etc., now have an age verification requirement to get in. Now, on that note, my advice to you is to avoid that like the plague, right? Because those companies are in the business of harvesting your data and selling that data. If you are logging in using your biometric data, whether it be photos of your face compared against, say, a driver's license or anything like that, when you then look at that pornography, they are then collecting that data on you and your sexual proclivities. Now, is it likely that most of your sexual proclivities are already out there by virtue of things you've just typed into, say, ChatGPT or Grok or Google search engine? Yes, of course. But you should be minimizing that as much as possible, particularly if you have an interest in some high role in government or armed forces or anything like that, where if you are a weak link, particularly if you want to work with ASIO or anything, if you have that kind of record potentially and you work in one of these places, that's one of the first things they want to ask is, can you be compromised? Is there anything about you that, if it were to become public, could be used as leverage to blackmail you and to get you to effectively commit treason against your own country? Okay, so that's something a lot of guys aren't thinking about, but I'm sure they've all had to deal with this, grapple with this over the last few months and recent law changes around it. So once again, stop wasting your sexual energy on pornography and through excessive masturbation, because the other issue is obviously the desensitization through pornography to actual sex. So aside from the actual physical element of it, There's the mental element whereby you may not be able to be aroused by seeing an actual naked woman in front of you, which, let's face it, if that's happening, you've got to really reevaluate where you are, because it should be arousing you, shouldn't it? Let's be honest, all right? So don't be desensitized through pornography and think that it's okay. And this whole gooning culture or whatever it is, it's not okay. It's going to affect you for the long run. And maybe there's research around this. It may even, if you get into a long-term relationship, lead you yourself to engaging in, I guess, a form of micro-cheating or an infidelity, if you will, through watching pornography and through potentially using things like Snapchat or messaging services to reach out to random women to get them to try to send you nude photos, or you spam them with unsolicited pornographic material, which you shouldn't do. It's obviously not appropriate. It's non-consensual, and that's awful, right? Now, I think that obviously there's a lot of pushback on pornography, whether it's healthy or not, and whether you can watch it with a healthy amount of what would you call a healthy amount of just trying to think of a word there, a healthy amount of discernment, I would say, maybe, between reality and what pornography is. I'm of the view that it's not healthy at all, really. And I think these bans, although I'm very against government intervention and believe in free market economy and lack of red tape, this is one of the few government interventions that I agree with, particularly for protecting minors against pornography at a young age. I mean, I was looking at pornography when I was about 9 or 10, and that was before iPhones and all this stuff, so I can't imagine what kids are looking at now. And, you know, my parents did everything they could to put the security systems on computers and things like that back in the day, but, you know, I think, you know, I hacked them pretty well, and the old clear the history situation, which I think if you're born in the 90s, we all know about that, right? But for parents now, I can't imagine how hard that is. Probably not a good use of words there, but anyway, you get my drift. The other thing I really particularly want to focus on too is the fact that men need to take their sexual power back. Enough's enough, right? We have had over 60 years now of hardcore feminist ideology around liberating women and their sexuality, and look where we are. Look where we are. We've got more pornography, we've got more OnlyFans, we've got more women selling their bodies, even on things like Snapchat, right? You talk to someone on Snapchat and straight away they're trying to get money off you. It's like, I'm just trying to have a conversation here, right? Whether you should be on Snapchat, you know, at all, you know, probably not. Who knows? Who cares? It can be a bit of fun, but I think we know it's largely used for nefarious reasons if you're an adult, okay? What I would point out, I guess, around taking your sexual power back is that, it's really important to understand that a man who cannot be bought with sex cannot be overpowered, okay? A man who cannot be bought with sex cannot be controlled easily, all right? And what we see due to feminism, and particularly third, fourth, and now fifth wave feminism, is the weaponization of sex by women against men. If it was the other way around, it wouldn't be okay. In fact, it has sort of been the other way around, where traditionally men have demanded sex and then they have pressured or committed sexual assault or whatever it might be against women, and we have changed the laws and we have called this out as moral and ethical evils, right? Now we have young women, particularly women under 40, weaponizing sex and using that as leverage to control men, okay? for example, what I've heard, unfortunately, a lot of is that in marriages and in relationships, women often seem to make jokes about if a man, for example, doesn't take the bin out or doesn't mow the lawn, then she doesn't have sex with him. Or she actively says, if you don't do these things, I'm not going to have sex with you. Now, that's a form of emotional and psychological abuse, and it's really a form of coercive control, right? Now, the female argument to that is going to be, well, a woman doesn't owe a man sex. She doesn't owe him access to her body unless he does the right thing. Well, okay, I can agree with that. You don't, and you shouldn't, give your body to someone who is treating you terribly, who you don't feel sexually or romantically attached to and attracted to, of course. And no man should force you as a woman to do that. It's awful. Once again, that's bordering on or is actual sexual assault and rape, okay? So I'm not condoning that, but what I'm saying is if you're at the point in a relationship where your only trump card is to use sexual access as a form of manipulation to get your partner or your husband to do something, then, well, likely he's got a lot to improve on, yes, of course, but you've crossed a line as a woman. You are engaging in emotional, psychological abuse and coercive control. That's what you're doing. Throw out the whole, it's about consent and it's about my body, my choice. We get that. We all understand that. I don't think any decent man disagrees with that, okay? But if you're weaponizing it, which is so often done in relationships, then there's something wrong with you as a woman as well. And primarily you as the woman, because even if he's not doing enough around the house or contributing enough, or maybe he's treating you badly, well, that can be worked on in other ways, short of engaging in that weaponization of sex. Now, we see that in the relationship, and what is the extension of that? Well, the extension of that, obviously, is pornography, is OnlyFans, okay? So my concern is that what's happening is that women in dating, women in general in society, know that they have this sexual power over men. They know that they are the sexual gatekeeper, and they know that from what they've been taught through feminist ideology for the last 60 years, that will always be in their back pocket, okay? To sound crass, it's the power of the pussy, okay? This idea that women don't have any power in society, when so much of that power is based on their beauty and their ability to give sexual access according to how they choose to do that. It's just not true that women don't have power, because that's the biggest power that they have, and it is incredibly powerful. Countries have been fought over and ruled over for women, all right? Wars have been fought for women. People have been killed for women. So it's incredibly powerful. But once again, this is, in terms of taking back sexual power as a man, well, it's now time for men to control sexual access for against women, right? So men now need to control sexual access in the same way as women have controlled sexual access for really many decades, if not centuries, okay? Men now need to also aim to become the sexual gatekeeper and not allow women access to their bodies unless those women prove their character to that man. Until those women put in the investment to be able to have sexual access to that man. All right, so my call to men is to have some self-control, right? As I said in my last video, have some self-control. Assess her character before you go to bed with her, all right? And as I've also mentioned, in terms of sex becoming a bonding mechanism, well, again, you want to be doing it in such a way that you're bonding first and having sex later, not having sex and then trying to bond after the fact, or using sex to bond. There are plenty of other things leading up to sex that you can do to learn about a woman and to build up sexual tension and have that, like we're talking, that sexual energy, so that when it does happen, it's a really amazing experience for both parties involved, okay? Now, I think it's important to come back as well to the fact that, well, not all women are going to treat sex in this manipulative way that I've just referred to. A lot of women, if not most, are really great women, okay? And they're not out there to hurt guys, and they are rightfully protective of their bodies and access to their bodies by virtue of the fact that the vast majority of sexual violence is perpetrated by males against female victims. All right, so obviously they need to be more cautious. But what I'm saying is that whilst those women exist, okay, they're actually reducing. That's my opinion. I think there's probably data to support that. I don't think the woman of today under 40 is the same as the woman of, say, my mother's generation or my grandmother's generation, okay? They are different. And so are the men to an extent, but I would say that the largest social change has been predominantly seen within the female demographic and not the male demographic. Men are pretty much the same as they've always been in terms of their intent to want to have sex with women. Women are now have become more masculine, if you will, and more open and honest with their sexual intention, which has always probably been there, but less so and certainly more hidden. Except the problem is now is that we have these tools like access to pornography and OnlyFans that have allowed it to become so prolific that it's effectively ruined courtship and bonding, and it's cheapening everyone's body. Women's bodies have been seen to be cheapened by the process, but what I'm trying to say today is that, well, it's cheapening of men as well, okay? So if you're going to give away your sexual energy and your sexual power, you've got to find your diamond in the rough and not the lump of coal, okay? Find the diamond in the rough and not the lump of coal. And it's really important to take your time with that. Now, what I was saying in my last video, to sort of summarize this as well, is to obviously stop chasing sex, okay? Practice delayed gratification and find a woman who is worthy of pursuing without requiring you to abandon all of your own standards. Now, one of the most powerful things you can do to have those standards is to control your sexual power and your sexual energy. And like I've already said, a man who cannot be controlled by sex cannot be easily controlled at all, okay? Don't let sex be the determining factor in whether or not you are a valuable man. Your sexual prowess is not a reflection of your character and your value as a man. So stop listening to all these manosphere YouTubers and influencers who talk specifically about you needing to have sex with more and more women because it makes you look like a valuable man. Well, it doesn't really. It doesn't really, and it's a waste of your time, right? You could spend so much time and energy focusing on self-improving, right? Improving your mental health first and foremost, improving your physical health and getting those checks. Like I said, get the PSA test for your prostate, get the testicular ultrasound, get your fertility checked, okay? And talk to your doctor if you were worried about erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation. Those are things you can do. And obviously work on your earning potential. Have some ambition. Go after your dreams. Pursue those things before you pursue pussy, okay? pursue your dreams before pussy. All right? As blunt as that is, that's what you should be doing. And in that process, you'll likely encounter women who are high value women, right? To use the manosphere term, all right? But when I say high value woman, I mean just a lovely, the girl next door, right? Just a lovely woman who's got some good values and character. She hasn't slept with a lot of men. She was raised well, and she loves you for who you are. Now, should she love you for who you are if who you are is a massive man whore who treats women terribly, who has no ambition, and doesn't try to improve in any other way other than racking up a body count? Well, of course not. How's that fair on her? It's not fair on her. So do all the hard work. Start early, particularly while you're still young and in your 20s. Doesn't mean you can't do it later. You should always try to self-improve. But start as early as possible and invest in yourself. Invest in the stock market and invest in your future. And with that, you will bring in a great woman into your life who may, as I always say, may become your future wife or the mother of your children. That should be an ultimate goal. But anyway, that's sort of all I've really got to say. We've covered a little bit here, and I want to talk about it a bit more. But yeah, stop chasing sex, right? Chase after her character. Chase after women with high character and pursue them first and foremost, okay? That's the best way to do things. So anyway, all I would say is that, once again, get those health tests, talk to your doctor, okay? Share this video with other men in your life who you think need to hear this, particularly the first part of this video. If you want to crop it or cut it or do whatever, that's fine. Do what you like. I appreciate you sharing. And really, I do get hit by the algorithms pretty badly, particularly on YouTube and things like that, whereby if I mention anything like sex, or I mention things like abuse, or even I've noticed if I talk about men's rights or men's dating advice or these sorts of things, I think, in all honesty, that the algorithm, aside from the obvious ones I mentioned there, the former of the few there, is hitting me hard with those. So the only way that I can grow as a channel and improve as a channel is with your support, which I greatly appreciate. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook as well. And leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Give me some feedback. Give me some questions, because I'd like to start doing some other content around answering questions in a Q&A type of format as well eventually, once I get all the camera equipment sorted out and a few other software programs and subscriptions. So yeah, please subscribe, like, share and comment. If you'd like to support me through my clothing business based on the values of freedom, adventure, solidarity and truth, that would be great. That website is ADVIKATE, ADVIKATE.au, and you can use the discount code Existential Evan there for 20% off at checkout. But anyway, I think once again that's all I've got to say. We'll unpack this a little bit more, I think, in another video as well. So, as always, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.